That's insane, incredible, knowing how many artists performed there, how many athletes played there, like big names, and just be in line with those people, it's incredible.
There is one thing Aryna Sabalenka has never had to question inside a tennis stadium: who the crowd came for. That certainty collapsed in Madrid. Alex Eala walked out, and Spain lost complete composure. Not polite applause, not a respectful acknowledgement, full worship.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be back. Can't wait to be out on court, and I hope to see you there.
Of course, we have to mention Alex Eala, the incredible fandom coming, across the globe, especially from the Filipino community. So
we came here because she's also here, of course.
The volume, the passion, the raw devotion from a Spanish crowd that has seen legends play on that clay, directed entirely at a 20-year-old from the Philippines. Sabalenka got stunned. The look on her face told a story her press conferences won't. There's context here that makes this even heavier. Eala didn't arrive as a stranger to Spain. She lived inside those borders. The Rafa Nadal Academy shaped her game, her mindset, her identity as a competitor.
18-year-old lefty Alex Eala from the Philippines could be the next big thing in pro tennis.
Spanish fans watched her develop from a teenage prospect into a WTA force. This week in Madrid, they decided she belonged to them. Meanwhile, the tournament is unfolding at brutal speed. Coco Gauff is already through her second round. The draw is thinning fast. Sabalenka holds the #1 ranking with an iron fist. That title isn't going anywhere quietly. Subscribe before the confrontation everyone is waiting for. The most shocking way a crowd can break a champion, it already happened.
After that, and watch her try to continue to progress, because I like her game. Obviously, she wants to get better than where she is now.
The crowd in Madrid didn't just cheer for Alex Eala. They screamed for her, they stood for her, they held signs with her name written in Spanish. This wasn't a warm reception for a foreign player passing through. This was a homecoming. And Aryna Sabalenka, the woman who has dominated women's tennis for the better part of 2 years, stood on the same grounds and felt the room belonged to someone else entirely.
She has more confidence and she goes for her shots without any doubt, I would say.
That is not a small thing in professional tennis. The sport runs on psychological warfare as much as it runs on ground strokes and serve percentages. Champions like Sabalenka have built careers on walking into stadiums and immediately owning the energy inside them. She feeds off pressure. She thrives when the weight is heaviest. But the crowd at the Caja Magica operates differently from any other venue on the WTA calendar. Madrid's tennis audience is emotionally invested in a way that goes beyond nationality. They adopted Eala years ago, quietly, at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Manacor. They watched a teenage girl from Manila arrive in Spain with raw talent and enormous ambition. They watched her grind through junior tournaments, absorb clay court lessons, and slowly transform herself into something the WTA couldn't ignore. By the time Eala stepped into the main draw at Madrid 2026, Spain had already made its decision about her. The Caja Magica simply confirmed it out loud. Eala's journey to this point deserves to be understood properly because it explains everything about why the reaction was so intense. She was born in Manila in 2005. Her father is Filipino-American, her mother Filipino. Tennis wasn't a guaranteed path, it was a chosen obsession. She rose quickly through junior rankings, won the 2021 French Open girls singles title, and caught the attention of the Rafa Nadal Academy. Being accepted into that program wasn't a formality, it was a selection. The academy doesn't take everyone. It takes players with the physical profile, the mental makeup, and the long-term ceiling to justify the investment. Eala had all three. She relocated to Manacor. She trained on those clay courts daily alongside some of the best young players in Europe. She absorbed Nadal's philosophy, relentless physicality, tactical patience, emotional endurance, and she made it her own. Spain didn't just teach her tennis. Spain built her tennis identity from the ground up. The Spanish crowd at Madrid understood every layer of that history when she walked out. They weren't cheering for a feel-good underdog story. They were cheering for someone they genuinely feel belongs to them. That distinction matters enormously when you're Sabalenka, standing across that emotional divide. Sabalenka arrived at the Madrid Open 2026 as the undeniable favorite. Her ranking tells one story. Her recent form tells a more frightening one. She has been operating at a level that separates her from every other player on tour. Her serve is one of the most destructive weapons in the women's game. Her forehand generates pace that most opponents simply cannot redirect effectively. Her mental composure under pressure, which was once a documented weakness early in her career, has been rebuilt into one of her defining strengths. She has won multiple Grand Slams. She has held the #1 ranking with the kind of consistency that only comes from sustained excellence across every surface and every situation. None of that disappeared in Madrid, but something shifted in the atmosphere around her. When a crowd chooses someone else with that level of volume and conviction, it creates a psychological friction that cannot simply be trained away. Sabalenka has faced hostile crowds before. She has played in stadiums where the audience was clearly rooting against her. She knows how to compartmentalize. But this situation carried a different texture. It wasn't hostility directed at her. It was genuine love directed at someone standing right beside her in the same tournament. The crowd wasn't trying to unsettle Sabalenka. They didn't need to. Their devotion to Eala was the unsettling event all by itself. Eala's playing style makes the spectacle even more compelling to watch. She is not a defensive player. She doesn't win by absorbing pace and waiting for errors. She attacks from the first ball. Her forehand is legitimately dangerous at the WTA level. Flat, heavy, and capable of ending points at any stage of a rally. Her movement on clay has improved significantly since her academy years. She reads the court well, positions herself aggressively, and takes the ball early in a way that disrupts rhythm. For a 20-year-old, her tactical decision-making is unusually mature. She doesn't play scared, she plays with the kind of controlled aggression that makes experienced opponents uncomfortable because it forces them to match her intensity from the very first game. That style translates directly to crowd engagement. Madrid audiences love aggressive tennis. They love watching players take risks and execute. They love the energy of someone who refuses to wait and instead chooses to take the fight forward. Eala plays exactly that way. Every time she winds up for a forehand winner, every time she charges the net, every time she hits a passing shot down the line, the crowd responds as if the stadium itself is leaning toward her. It creates a feedback loop between player and audience that becomes genuinely electric over the course of a match. Sabalenka has experienced that kind of crowd connection before, just usually when it's directed at her. The broader context of women's tennis in 2026 makes this moment even more significant. The WTA Tour is in a genuinely interesting place right now. Sabalenka sits at the top, but the field beneath her is far more competitive than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Coco Gauff has matured into a consistent Grand Slam-level threat. Aryna Sabalenka remains dangerous on any surface when her serve is working at full capacity. Younger players are breaking through with less reverence for established hierarchies. The era of a single player dominating conversation for an extended period is being challenged constantly by new narratives and new faces. Eala is the newest and most compelling of those faces right now. The Philippines has never produced a WTA player of this magnitude. That historical weight follows Eala everywhere she goes, and Madrid is no exception. She carries the expectations of an entire nation of tennis fans who have waited decades for a player to represent them at the highest level of the women's game. The Filipino community across Europe turned out in force for her Madrid matches. They mixed with Spanish fans who adored her for entirely different reasons. The result was a crowd atmosphere around Eala that no tournament organizer could have manufactured artificially. It was entirely organic. It was entirely earned. Sabalenka, for her part, has said nothing publicly that acknowledges the situation directly. That silence is interesting. She is not a player who typically avoids questions or deflects attention. She is usually direct, often blunt, and occasionally disarmingly honest in press conferences. The absence of any comment about Eala's reception in Madrid suggests either deliberate restraint or something more telling. A recognition that acknowledging it publicly would give the narrative more oxygen than she is willing to provide. Champions understand that attention is a resource. When you're number one and a 20-year-old challenger is stealing the crowd's emotional loyalty, the last thing you do is confirm it out loud. Sabalenka is smart enough to know that, but smart enough to know something and unaffected by it are two entirely different things. The Rafa Nadal Academy connection adds another dimension that the Madrid crowd felt deeply. Nadal himself is the defining figure in Spanish tennis history. He built his entire legend on clay. He won at Roland Garros 14 times. He made the Caja Magica feel like a personal property during his peak years. The academy that bears his name is considered one of the most prestigious development programs in the sport. When Eala emerged from that program and arrived at the Madrid Open, Nadal's home territory in spirit, if not by geography, the symbolism was impossible to miss. The crowd responded to that symbolism with full force. This is the most shocking way Spain could have expressed its adoption of Eala. Not a ceremony, not an official acknowledgement, just 10,000 people deciding simultaneously that this player is theirs. In a stadium where legends have competed for decades, in front of the reigning world #1, with cameras broadcasting it internationally. The spontaneous nature of it is what gives it genuine weight. Nobody organized the reaction. Nobody coordinated the devotion. It simply happened because Eala had earned it over years of quiet, consistent work on Spanish soil. The pressure that is created on Sabalenka is subtle but real. Every match Eala plays in Madrid from this point forward will carry this crowd energy. Every time the draw produces a potential path toward a Sabalenka-Eala meeting, the narrative will intensify. The WTA draw in Madrid is thinning at a pace. Goff has moved through convincingly. Sabalenka is expected to advance. Eala's position in the draw keeps the possibility of a direct collision alive, and the tennis world is fully aware of what that match would mean beyond the points on offer. A Sabalenka versus Eala match in Madrid, with that crowd behind Eala, would be one of the most watched WTA matches in years. Not because of the ranking gap, not because of the tactical matchup, though that would be genuinely compelling on clay, but because of the atmosphere it would generate, because of what it would mean for Eala's story, because of what it would test in Sabalenka's armor. The crowd factor would be unprecedented for a match of that nature. Sabalenka has handled hostile crowds. She has never handled a crowd that was hostile through pure love for the opponent rather than active dislike for her. That is a different psychological challenge entirely. Eala understands the moment she is living in. She has spoken in interviews about the responsibility she feels representing the Philippines. She carries it with a maturity that is unusual for her age. She doesn't appear overwhelmed by the attention. She appears energized by it. That is the mark of a player with the mental infrastructure to compete at the very top level of the sport for a long time. The academy trained her body. Her own character built the mental foundation. Madrid is simply the largest stage on which both have been displayed simultaneously. The Spanish press has embraced the story fully. Local sports media have run features on Eala's academy years, her family background, her language ability, her personality in the locker room. She has been described in Spanish outlets as belonging to two worlds simultaneously. Filipino by identity, Spanish by formation. That framing resonates because it is accurate. She is genuinely both, and in Madrid, being both is enough to make an entire stadium forget, just for a moment, who the top seed is. Sabalenka will refocus. She always does. Her championship mentality is not a marketing description. It is a documented behavioral pattern. She has faced adversity before and converted it into motivation with startling efficiency. If anything, this situation may sharpen her rather than destabilize her permanently. Champions tend to use disrespect, real or perceived, as competitive fuel. The crowd choosing Eala in Madrid may end up being the thing that makes Sabalenka more dangerous in the later rounds, not less. But that calculus doesn't erase what already happened. Spain worshipped Alex Eala in the most public, undeniable, and emotionally raw way possible. Sabalenka stood within the same tournament walls and experienced something she had never experienced at that volume before. The moment is already documented. It is already part of the 2026 Madrid narrative. No result changes the fact that a 20-year-old from the Philippines walked into the Caja Magica and made an entire nation feel like she was always supposed to be there. That is the story. That is the shock. And the tournament isn't even over yet. If this video gave you something different, a perspective you didn't get anywhere else, subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the notification bell because the next development in this story is coming fast and you will not want to find out about it late. This is only the beginning of what Alex Eala is about to do to women's tennis.